Hello and welcome to Free Speech.
Your voice in the national conversation.
Hi, I'm Rick Edwards.
I'm Tina Dahealy.
That's Ed Miliband.
And this is our live audience.
They are lively. They really are.
How are you going to vote on May the 7th? Do you know yet?
We're going to be putting 7 political parties in the hot seat over the next 4 weeks, ready to answer any question you might have about who they are and what they stand for.
Tonight, we start with Labour and their leader, Ed Miliband. So send your questions and comments to us and to each other using the hashtag #AskMiliband.
Yes, it's all part of the Free Speech service that will help you decide who, if anyone, to lend your support to come May the 7th. The service that starts with this highly informative film.
A quick free speech introduction to the Labour Party. The Labour Party symbol is a red rose. It used to be a red flag, which is also a song they used to sing, and sometimes still do. It's a good song. The party was founded in 1900 and gets its name because it was founded to represent workers, so think Labour as in labouring. Trade unions helped found the Labour Party and still give it much of their funding. Though the party insists that doesn't mean the unions have control, opponents say otherwise.
It was the unions who helped elect Ed Miliband as Labour leader.
Labour are the second largest party in Parliament and the official opposition to the government. 33% of their MPs are women, 90% are state educated and 5% are from an ethnic minority. Most of Labour's current MPs represent the north of England, London and Scotland. There are just 10 Labour MPs in non-London southern seats. Past leaders include Tony Blair, 3 election wins, 1 Iraq war, and Gordon Brown, who oversaw economic growth when Chancellor, but economic crash when Prime Minister. Ed Miliband became Labour leader in 2010. He once lived in the United States, loves baseball, he's a Boston Red Sox fan, and got 2 A's and 2 B's at A-level. After working for Gordon Brown, he became Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change in the last government, and can do a Rubik's Cube in a minute and a half.
Not anymore, I've got a bit rusty actually.
Key Labour policies in the last 5 years have included promising to build 200,000 homes a year by 2020, lowering tuition fees to £6,000 and guaranteeing a job for every young person who's been out of work for a year. Criticisms during Ed's time in charge have included not apologising for spending too much money when in power, and that he comes across as a bit odd sometimes.
OK, so our first question this evening comes from Isabel. Where's Isabel?
Yeah.
OK, what do you want to ask, Isabel?
Do you think Labour is losing touch with its working class roots?
OK, Ed, are Labour losing touch with their working class roots?
I don't, Isabel, it won't surprise you to hear me say that. Look, I think that this is a time when you need a government that is really going to be on the side of working people. And I think what's different today, maybe compared to some times in the past, is that we've got a country where a few people at the top are doing well, and there's a lot of people who are finding life quite hard and are struggling. And when you look at our policies, whether it's raising the minimum wage, or dealing with the exploitation of zero-hours contracts, which I know affects young people, or lowering tuition fees, I think those policies are actually appealing to a broad section of the population. But I think that working people come in many different forms, and I think many, many people, as I say, are struggling and want to see change, and that's what we offer.
OK, yeah, lady to the left of the question.
I mean, the working class has declined in the UK in the last few years. Do you not think it's more important that we focus on women who make up 50% of the population?
Well, I think it's incredibly important that we do that, and I think the first thing we've got to do is change the way Parliament is composed. A third of Labour MPs are women. That's good, but not good enough, in my view. About 40% of my shadow cabinet are women. That's good, but not good enough, in my view. I want to get to a 50% cabinet, 50% women in a Labour cabinet, because I think that representation of women in politics really, really matters, because it shapes the agenda that we are focusing on.
OK, yeah, gentleman here. A couple of quick comments, Reece. Yeah.
Labour have not opposed and continuously supported austerity cuts put forward by the current government, and that is in effect shrinking the public sector, which provides secure employment for a lot of the working class. So how can you say that doesn't betray the current working class?
What's your name? Here's what I would say to you, because there is a big choice at this election. This government says they want to go back to the 1930s in terms of public spending as a share of national income. Now, that's before there was a National Health Service, and I think that is incredibly dangerous. Now, it's true, we said we will make spending reductions to get the deficit down, because I think we need to do that, but we will accompany that with fair tax measures. So, for example, reversing the tax cut for all of those earning over £150,000 a year to get the deficit down. I think that's the right thing to do. And crucially, something else, which actually goes to the first question I was asked. Why is it that this government promised to eliminate the deficit and has failed? It's actually because they haven't been getting the tax revenues in. Now, why has that happened? Because you've had people's wages and living standards falling, and therefore the tax revenues going down. So a crucial part of a deficit plan, as well as some spending reductions and fair taxes, is actually to say, let's run the economy so we have higher wages, higher skills, and we get the tax revenues in. Now, I think that's a balanced plan, as against an unbalanced and extreme plan from this government.
OK, yeah, gentlemen.
There used to be this culture of Labour voters, traditional Labour voters. My granddad voted Labour, my dad voted Labour, I'm going to vote Labour. But recently, people are feeling left out by your party because they feel that instead of focusing on the working class, you're focusing on projects, very liberal projects like feminism, which they are not interested in. They want money in their pockets.
I think some people disagree with you. What was your name?
Look, woman to woman van. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you could be putting money into, more money into the NHS.
Which we're going to do.
You're not going to do that. That's in the policy.
We are going to do that. But what was your name?
Alex.
Alex. Look, let me go directly to what you say, Alex. I believe in equality, right? That's why I came into the Labour Party. Now, the battle against inequality comes in many different forms.
But Welsh voters are leaving you.
Well,
Northern voters are leaving you.
Let me just finish my point.
Your own seat is under threat.
Let me finish my answer. Look, it comes in many different forms, but the oppression and injustice facing women and the oppression and injustice facing working people who are not women, both of those can be tackled. Look, raising the minimum wage to £8 an hour, actually predominantly, because many low-wage workers are women, will help women. Technically zero-hours contracts will do the same. So I don't accept what you say, that somehow there's a contradiction between helping working people and helping women, because, you know, we're talking about the same people.
You say that women and young people, so our age, don't vote as much as, say, people who are our parents' or our grandparents' generation. So why would you necessarily say that we matter? Because we don't vote as much, and we're obviously not guaranteed in Parliament, so all the laws and things like that go towards...
OK, so where will you go after the youth vote, given you know that the youth probably aren't going to vote as much?
Yeah.
I mean, look,
why do you care?
it would be dishonest if I said I didn't want young people to vote for me because it would help me get into power. So obviously that's obviously part of it. But here's something else I would say. Look, you judge the dignity of a country by how it treats the old, but you judge the future of a country by how it treats the young. And I think the problem about Britain today is that lots of young people think, you know, it's what I call the promise of Britain, that you're going to have a better life than your parents. And lots of young people think, I'm going to have a worse life than my parents. Now, goodness me, what have we got to as a country that has been the case? And frankly, my generation, and I include David Cameron and Nick Clegg in this, it's sort of, you know, it was all right for us, but you know, how can we look the young people in the eye and say anything other than our mission is to make sure, somebody said it earlier, that young people don't pay the price of hard times, and that we actually build a better life for young people in jobs, in education, in housing, in a lot of the issues that we're going to cover tonight. So, look, it matters for the future of a country, and obviously it matters to me because I want votes. Obviously, I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but it matters to me in principle about the future of a country.
OK, I'm going to take a few quick comments now. Yeah, comment from you, sir?
So I think you make some good points about inequality, actually. And I'm just wondering, seeing as the economist Thomas Piketty thinks that there should be a global tax of 80 or 90% on sort of high earners, and seeing as the TUC union think that the minimum wage should be raised to £10 an hour rather than £8 an hour, as the Labour Party wants to do, you know, and seeing as, you know, there's all this evidence for this, you know, such negative effects of inequality, which I'm sure you know about, do you think your measures actually go far enough, really?
OK, we're going to take a couple more comments and come back to that. Yes, lady here, please.
You speak about representation. Stonewall's recently made it trans-inclusive. How do you think you'll make Parliament more LGBT plus representative?
I just wanted to say, so you have said that young people are the future of this country. How do you aim to help us? Because at the moment, you know, you are proposing to push tuition fees down to 6,000, but could you not put it back down to 3,000? Because that is what's going to help young people, because they're not going to want to go to uni if they're going to get in debt. That's the problem. And if young people are the future of this country, then you need to make them want to go and get an education and help the country.
OK, so should the tuition fee cut be greater?
Yeah, even lower.
OK. Should I deal with those three?
Do inequality.
Yeah. So it's a good question. I confess I haven't read all of Thomas Piketty's book. Maybe you have. The thing I would say, though, is that the tax system matters, but there's something else that matters even more than that, and that is the nature of the economy before you get to the tax system. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Look, part of the problem in this country is the minimum wage is incredibly low. Now, that's not about tax and benefits. Tax and benefits is important, but the minimum wage is too low. We've got so many low-paid workers in our country. So let's raise the minimum wage, let's promote a living wage, let's make sure that when it comes to executive pay, there's fairness in executive pay. So we say, for example, that on every remuneration committee of those big companies, you should have an ordinary worker, so top CEOs can't just pay themselves what they like. So I think you've got to look at tax bills. I'm not in favour of his global wealth tax. I don't think it's going to work. But I do think it's about the economy itself as well as the tax system, if you like.
Okay,
on the transgender question, look, we've got a candidate, Emily Brothers, who's an incredibly brave woman who's come out, who has had the most vile criticism made of her. I think there's a big job to do, if we're talking about representation, to reach out to people from the LGBT community. Now, we have a number of openly gay candidates standing in this election. We've got a brilliant trailblazer in Angela Eagle, who you probably know about, who's been in Parliament for 21 years, the first MP to come out as a lesbian. But look, if we are thinking about the country and how we change the country in Parliament so it looks like the country it seeks to serve, I agree with you. There's still a lot of work to be done in relation to that. On the tuition fees question.
I think actually we're going to come back to tuition fees a bit later on, so I think we'll have a good old chat about it. Let's have before we move on, actually, can we just have a couple of sort of quicker questions? What have you got online, Tina?
This is starting to come in already. This one from Connor, who asks, how do we know you'll stick to your promises like so many before you haven't?
Yeah.
Tuition fees, as an example.
Tina, look, this is a big question. I totally understand it.
I was hoping it was going to be quick.
No, because it's not easy. Look, it's not easy, this, because people know that politicians have broken their promises in the past. It's not just Nick Clegg. I often say this about Nick Clegg. He obviously undermined himself when he did that thing on tuition fees.
We're not talking about Nick Clegg, though.
No, but let me just say, look, my mission and what I've tried to do is make sure that everything I promise is funded, credible, deliverable. And that's the most important thing. So look, on this tuition fees thing, in 2011, I said I wanted to lower the tuition fees to £6,000. Lots of people then started saying, Miliband's not going to do it, he's promised it, he's not going to do it, and I'm going ahead with it, I'm going through with it. So, look, the best thing I can say is, judge me in government, but I've made sure that the promises I make are the promises I keep. Sometimes...
So young people feel that you will make sure that you go ahead with it.
Well,
because
look, my manifesto...
It's all words, right? That's what I declare. Sign a contract, sign something.
Yeah, my manifesto, we've got our 5 pledges being unveiled on Saturday. My manifesto will be my contract with you. Absolutely, my manifesto is my contract with you. And look, you're going to have to judge me on how well I do in keeping those promises. But I totally understand this point. I was going to say, look, some people in my party find it frustrating. They say, why don't you make bigger promises? And I often say, well, I want to be the first politician to under-promise and over-deliver, not over-promise and under-deliver.
Is from Nitra. I'm being forced out of the city I was born and raised in by prohibitively expensive rents. Would you introduce rent controls?
We would in the following sense, that we've said, and this is a massive issue, the private rented sector, right? People are being totally ripped off. So what are we going to do? We're going to say we should have 3-year rents, not 1-year or 6-month tenancies. So you have a fixed 3-year term. Within that time, the rents are controlled. So they can't just be like jacked up by 10%. Without warning, because it's the landlords who have the power and the tenants who don't. And we're going to say letting agents will no longer be able to charge fees to tenants. Because at the moment, letting agents are charging landlords and tenants fees. So I think this is a... Look, I'll be candid with you. The last Labour government didn't do enough on this issue of what's happening in the private rented sector. It particularly affects young people, but it affects young families as well, and we've got to deal with it.
So you're promising to bring in controlled rents?
I am for these 3-year tenancies, yes.
OK, Rick?
OK, any quick questions from the audience? Anyone just got a quick little question? Yes, go on.
Good evening to you, Mr. Miliband. My question to you is...
Call me Ed.
Yeah, no, I'll call you Miliband or Mr. Ed Miliband. Okay. My question to you is that...
What should I call you?
I am Bashkin.
Bashkin.
Yes. I have only been living in this country since 1999.
Where did you come from, Bashkin?
I am of Kosovo origin. Most of my friends say to me, when I tell them I'm conservative, they're like, oh, why do you support the Conservative Party? They are for the rich people. And I try my best not to tell them I'm conservative, because I know as soon as I tell them I'm conservative, they start saying to me, no, we don't want anything to do with them, they are this, they are that. But that's their opinion, and I have a different opinion to them. But what I want to say to you now is that, starting with Gordon Brown and any Labour Prime Ministers that this country has had, they have been nothing else but disaster for this country. And question to you is, how can we, the people of this country, trust you when we have trusted other Labour Prime Ministers and we have seen what they have done to this country? We saw what Gordon Brown did.
Okay.
I've got a feeling I'm not going to convince you, Bashkin, but I will, I will do my best. Look, I take a different view about the last Labour government's record. I think about what we did for the health service, what we did for education. We introduced a minimum wage. We introduced tax credits. We introduced Sure Start centres. We made a huge difference to families and people across this country. But look, in a way, you're totally entitled to your view and to be a Conservative. You've got to make a judgment about the coming 5 years about who can best serve your interests. Now, I don't know what you do, but I would contend that actually it's not just better for the people I've been talked about already to have a less unequal society. It's better for all of us. Look, I genuinely believe this. I think more unequal societies are less successful societies. I think there's evidence from that around the world. And, you know, I think if we don't use the talents of every young person, then we're all poorer as a society. If we have people in insecure work, not knowing where the next hour of work is coming from, we're all worse off. If we have an NHS that is going backwards and in crisis, then it harms us all. So, look, you're entitled to your view, you make your judgment, but I think I offer a better plan for the next 5 years.
OK. I've got a quick question. Has anyone got a quick question? OK, I'm going to try you.
I believe politics begins at home, and children are growing up seeing what the last government has done to our families. How are you going to be different? How are you going to persuade these younger voters who can't vote yet, but you can do differently?
OK. So, can I just come back to you? Say a bit more about what you mean specifically.
So, for me, for example, I've grown up in a single-parent household in a council home, and I've watched what, not just the last Conservative government, I've watched what the Labour government since Tony Blair has done to my family. And I wanted to know how you're going to persuade children who are coming into the politics world now that you can do differently.
When you say, I don't want to make this a dialogue, but when you say what the last Labour government or this Conservative government did to your family, just say a bit more about what you mean.
Consistently, I mean, primarily the Conservative government has got worse and worse, and the bedroom tax has affected my house very badly when I moved to uni, and other things like that. I mean,
of course. No,
how can you be different?
Well, look, the first thing I'll say is I'll abolish the bedroom tax. I mean, of all of the taxes that have been invented, I think the bedroom tax is one of the worst. It hasn't even fulfilled its original purpose. It is mean. It is unfair. I think 2/3 of the people hit are disabled people. I watch David Cameron at Prime Minister's Questions each week, and when he tries to justify it, he can't justify it. I think even Nick Clegg now doesn't support the bedroom tax. I'm not sure quite where he was last time I looked, but look, I think it's got to be got rid of. But look, I think there's something really important that I would say to you also, which is about the country that we live in. And I think there are so many single parents out there who are doing an absolutely brilliant job for their kids in incredibly difficult circumstances. And I think we should be praising single parents for what they do and supporting you with tax credits, a higher minimum wage, those things that will make a difference to your life.
Brilliant.
OK, we're going to move on to a question from John Morris. Where's John? Yes, what do you want to ask, John?
Fantastic. You're often portrayed as a bit strange, a bit weird, and that you look
I haven't heard that, John.
And that you look a bit like Wallace.
I'd heard that.
Do you think that any of that matters?
That's a good question. No, is the basic point. Look, the thing I would say, other people may disagree, look, the thing I would say about this is if you want this to be a beauty contest or a photo op contest, why are you laughing? Then I'm not going to win it, right? I'm not trying to win a photo op contest, and if I was, bacon sandwich being an illustration, then I wouldn't win it. I think there are other things that matter in a leader. I think ideas matter to change the country. I think decency matters, and whether you hear the voices of people right across your country. And I think something else above all, which is standing up for your principles. Even if you've got powerful opponents, Rupert Murdoch, the energy companies, the banks, I think you need someone in Downing Street who will actually stand up for what they believe in, however powerful the opponent.
You say you don't really mind that much about your image, and I saw in an interview recently you said you'll be resilient. But how can you expect voters to believe that? And they'll elect you and rely on you to be the representative of the country, and no one else will take you that seriously.
Well, look, you're entitled to your view about that. It's obviously not the way I see it. You know, I believe I will be a good representative for this country. You'll have to make the judgment on that. But I believe I'll be a good representative. Let me say something about my record in government. I was the climate change secretary at the 2009 Copenhagen talks, where I represented the country. And, you know, nobody at the talks was asking me, are you good eating a bacon sandwich? They were actually saying to me, you know, where does Britain stand on climate change? Can you represent the issues? And I actually think that's, you know, that's the issue. That's the issue. What kind of leadership does one have for this country? Let me just say, just briefly, Rick, one other thing.
No, you do that. Hey. You know, we saw what Blair did, converted to Catholicism after he left.
I don't think there's any chance of me converting to Catholicism, but I'm not going to make a judgment about other people doing that. But I'm happy to get into that if you want.
No, it's okay.
But there is an issue here, and we haven't yet talked about it, which is what kind of country do we want to be in the world? Do we want to be an outward-looking country? Do we want to be a country in the European Union or outside it? What role do we play in the world? And I think that's, you know, what really matters, and that's what people will be looking to Britain for.
OK. What are people saying online, Tina?
I'll read you this from Martin, who asks, how can you run the country when you've never even run a corner shop? And I think that's in reference to you working in politics for all of your career. You've been criticised by business leaders. How would you respond to that?
I was a journalist at one point. I don't know whether that counts.
Political journalist? On a politics show?
Yeah, I was. A news programme. But, you know, I'm not embarrassed by caring about politics, and I've cared about politics most of my life. I was brought up by two parents who were refugees from the Nazis, who taught me that if you saw an injustice in the world, you should try and do something about it. And, you know, I think the question that really matters in this is something that we don't talk about enough in politics, which is the idea of empathy, right? Do you listen? Are you able to understand? Listening is not a quality that most political leaders would talk about. But I think it's right to talk about it, because the question is, can you walk in other people's shoes? Can you understand where they're coming from? So I think that is the key test.
And what about businesses? You say you're not listening to them and you're not on the side of businesses.
Well, some businesses don't like what I'm saying. So when I say that we've got to reform the energy market, some of the energy companies don't like it, but that's tough. Right? Some of the banks don't like what I'm saying. But, you know, I'm actually serving the millions of businesses in this country who say to me, I don't like the fact that I'm being ripped off on my energy prices. I don't like the fact that the banks don't serve me. So, you know, there'll be some people who don't like what I'm saying, but that's always what happens when you try and change things, and I'm determined to change things.
Let me fit in a comment. Can you and Dave please stop being so shouty on PMQs? Do you both not understand what microphones are for?
PMQs is awful, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest, it is awful. I mean, it's an awful advert for politics. And look, you know, if I could think of a way of changing it, I'm open to ideas. If I could think of a way of changing it, I would. I think you're right. I don't think the tone is good. Look, I sometimes say, and I'm quoting President Obama, you know, you can disagree without being disagreeable. And actually, he's sort of right about that. And two blokes shouting at each other is not great. So look, I sort of take my share of responsibility for PMQs. It's a constant battle to try and change it. If I was Prime Minister, I'd try and make it more civilised. One thing I'll say, by the way, we're going to have a People's Question Time, if I'm Prime Minister, in the Palace of Westminster regularly on a Wednesday. And I think people will start to compare it to Prime Minister's questions, and then people think, oh, hang on a minute, you know, why are people who aren't MPs able to behave themselves, but MPs aren't able to behave themselves? So maybe that is one thing that we can do to make things better.
Alex Hancock. Alex, yes?
Do you think the Labour Party would be in a different position if your brother was the leader?
Look, I thought I was the best person for the job when I ran for leader, and I think that now. And let me try and explain to you why I thought that. And it was obviously really tough for me to be in a contest with my brother, tough for him as well. I thought we needed to move on from New Labour, because I thought that we'd been a good government, but I thought on issues like Iraq, inequality, we got it wrong, right? And we needed to move on. And I thought I was the best person to move the Labour Party on. And sure, it was bruising, and sure, it was difficult, but I thought that then, and I think that now as well.
So do you regret stabbing him in the back or not?
That's not the way I'd describe it. That's not the way I'd describe it. Look, we both stood in this contest, and we both offered different things to the Labour Party. It was a narrow victory for me, but I won the election, I won the contest. And it was tough at the time, and it's obviously healed since then. But, you know, I think the thing people are focused on for the next 55 days is a choice between me and David Cameron, not me and David Miliband. And that is obviously the contest at this election.
Okay. Yeah, gentleman there.
I'll just say, people like to sleep on New Labour. You got to remember that things like your mum being able to take time off if she's pregnant and stuff like that, maternity leave. That was New Labour. That things you guys take for granted and stuff, innit, man? You need to recognise what they did for us.
That's quite right.
The only reason why you became the leader is because of the trade unions. Your MPs didn't want you as leader. Your members didn't want you as leader. The only reason why you got there was the trade unions, and now they're holding you to ransom. Len McCluskey is the only reason why you're sat in that chair instead of David. And if you compare...
You don't need an hand, I don't think.
It was actually ordinary working men and women who voted for me in the contest. Let's just be very clear about this. It wasn't about the trade union leaders. It was about ordinary men and women working in shops, working throughout our country in the public and private sector. They were the people that voted for me.
But your own MPs and the Labour Party members voted
we have
against you.
We have an electoral college that makes the decisions. And look, to be absolutely honest, the Labour Party is not focused on what happened 4.5 years ago. It's focused on the coming election and the people of the country.
People in my hometown of Rotherham feel let down by the Labour Party. Why should we vote Labour and not look to alternatives such as UKIP?
What's your name? Andrew. Well, Andrew, let me say, people in Rotherham are right to feel let down by the Labour Party, because we did let them down.
All right. That was Labour.
And I deeply
Hundreds
regret...
of innocent children that were abused, that was Labour. That was Labour Council.
And I deeply regret what happened. That's why we suspended councillors. That's why when the recent report came out, the Labour cabinet resigned. Now, obviously, we've got other people now running the council, commissioners running the council. The most important thing I can do as the party leader, and what the MPs in Rotherham are doing, is saying, let's learn the lessons. Let's learn the lesson as a place. Rotherham needs to learn the lessons, and we need to learn the wider lessons on child sexual exploitation. Because, look, it is terrible what happened, but I don't believe UKIP are the answer. I honestly don't believe UKIP are the answer. They want to try and exploit this problem. I don't think we should try and exploit what happened. I think we should learn the lessons from it for the future.
Yeah, these are quick ones. This one from Lucia. What do you have to say about people calling you a weak leader?
They're wrong. They're wrong.
This is what I wanted.
This one, does politics really work for the people, and do politicians actually care?
No and yes.
Yeah, this is good. Okay, any more quick questions? Yeah, quick question here.
I just want to quickly say I'm 100% backing you on votes at 16. However, we have to understand that there's so many young people who aren't as politically educated. If you did become Prime Minister, what would you do to make sure that every single young person knows about politics and knows who might be running their country?
Okay, so will you introduce more political
Look, I think the thing we need to do is to have much better citizenship education in schools. Because I think lots of young people say to me, well, I wasn't properly educated in school about democracy. And, you know, it does go to something about education. I think education is about passing exams, but it's not just about passing exams. I think it's about a lot more than that. And it's about preparing people to be citizens of the country. So I think you're bang on this. Alongside votes at 16 and 17, you've got to have proper and reformed citizenship education so people learn about the issues.
Okay, quick question from here, please.
What's your biggest fear about being Prime Minister?
That's good.
It's probably about my family and about whether I'm going to be able to see my family enough. I already find it, I've got 2 young boys. I already find it tough as leader of the opposition. And you know, it's one of the things that myself and Justine spend a lot of time focusing on, which is carving out enough time for them. Because they're 4 and 5, they're at the age where they notice if I'm not around. And, look, that's a challenge, as I say, as leader of the opposition, and it would be a bigger challenge as Prime Minister.
Okay, let's move on to our next question from Daniel Craggs. Where's Daniel? Yes, what do you want to ask, Daniel?
I was just wondering how you can justify the reduction in tuition fees when only the rich are going to benefit from it.
Okay, so I said we get back to tuition fees.
This is an important question, Daniel. I don't agree that only the rich are going to benefit, and let me explain why. It is people on low incomes, middle incomes, high incomes who are burdened down by debt, all of whom are beginning their life with £44,000 worth of debt on average. Now, it so happens that the government's designed a system where 75% of people aren't even going to be able to pay off the debt. That's their only explanation for why they're saying somehow low-income people won't benefit. But it's just plain wrong, because I don't want young people from any background starting their life with that level of debt. The lady here said, wouldn't it have been better to reduce them to £3,000? Yes, absolutely. But, well, I'll tell you why I didn't do it. Because I've got to make sure the sums add up, and I don't want to be a Nick Clegg. I don't want to start off by saying I'm going to reduce it to £3,000, then get into government and try and hope you don't catch up with me because I haven't actually managed to reduce it. So I'm going to deliver on the promises, as I said earlier, that we can make. Let's say one other thing on this, because Daniel's question. We're also doing something important, which is raising the grant by £400 a year. Would I like to do more? Yes, I would. But it is a sign that I understand the point that it is also people's living costs that is a massive issue facing students.
What are people saying online about tuition fees, Tim?
This one from Nadine. Tuition fees aren't stopping people from going to uni more than ever before. They're more from poorer backgrounds. This one from Fallen Angel. When you lower uni fees, will you bring back EMAs for 16 to 18-year-olds in education?
Look, I can't make a promise on the EMA for the reasons that I've set out. I want to make promises that I can keep. I know the EMA abolition was a big problem for many people. Just on this point about poorer backgrounds, it's a really important point, this. The government says, oh, we've done brilliantly on poorer backgrounds. What do they mean by done brilliantly? You've still got a situation where at the top universities, it's something like you're 12 times more likely to be from a richer background than a poorer background. That is hopeless. I mean, that's a hopeless situation. We cannot be complacent about social mobility in this country, but it is going backwards, not forwards. So I just don't agree with what the person says. I can't promise to bring back EMA. No.
Okay.
It's about money, it's about having brain.
Okay, let's get to it here, please. Yes, it's with you. It's with you.
Okay. So you were saying how you're 12 times more likely to go to, say, one of the top universities if you're from a more rich background. So what are you going to do to ensure that social mobility starts in state schools and make them rival the private institutions that benefit so many people at the top?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. I think it starts early. So nursery education, we're going to expand nursery education from 15 free hours to 25 free hours. I think that's important for 3- and 4-year-olds. I think that will make a difference. I think we've got to deal with, we've got a promise to deal with class sizes for 5-, 6- and 7-year-olds because they're ballooning upwards, and we've got to deal with that. And then it's about standards and opportunity in schools. And it is having the highest standards with qualified teachers in schools. But you're right, it is a continuing battle, this. And it does go back to the earlier point about an unequal society, because a more unequal society, actually the question that was asked over there, a more unequal society is a less mobile society. So it is a constant battle, this. And look, there are great state schools doing a brilliant job. My old school, Haverstock Comprehensive, has got a brilliant head who's been there for 15 years, encouraging aspiration in young people. So there's a lot more to do, I agree with you.
Okay, are you satisfied with that answer?
Yeah. No.
Good stuff, good stuff. Yeah, gentleman here. Don't know so shocked.
You talk about tuition fees, but it was actually Labour that introduced tuition fees using Scottish votes, and yet it's English people that are affected by it.
Look, I understand the point about. I understand the point you're making. We introduced tuition fees in order to expand universities to it was raised to £3,000. As I say, I would like to lower tuition fees below £6,000 if I could. I've done what I can. But I think you've got to judge me on what I'm doing in the future, not necessarily on what's been done in the past. I think it was done for different reasons when it was first introduced. I think trebling it to £9,000 went far too far.
Okay, yeah, gentleman here in the check shirt.
I think charging any student tuition fees is absolutely crazy. It should be zero.
Sure.
Education should be free. Now, all the problems mentioned tonight, the majority of them can be solved by the creation of a people's bank. We need to close the private banks, and we need to create a sovereign currency in this country. 97% of new money is created in the form of loans. How the hell can we ever get on top of the economy whilst it's all going to the profits of the banks? 100 billion in bonuses has been paid to the financial institutions since the crash. Just think about the profits from the banks and all those bonuses going to the people, reinvested in schools, the police, all public services. There would be no tuition fees. What are your thoughts on a people's bank that I represent, the Ubuntu Party?
The what
UK?
party, sorry?
Ubuntu.
Right.
It's from South Africa. You need to Google search it.
Right.
It translates. It translates.
You're not standing in the election in Britain.
I am standing. I'm standing against Andrew Mitchell. I'm standing up against Andrew Mitchell, who's fiddled his taxes, etc. That at the end of the day, you need to
forgive me if I urge people to vote Labour rather than for the Ubuntu party. Look, I don't think I go with you on your banking proposal, but I will say this about the banks. Look, the banks were the primary cause of the financial crisis, and I think it is right that they help us to make a fairer society. So we're saying we're going to tax the bankers' bonuses so we can guarantee a job for every young person who's been unemployed more than a year, and raise the bank levy actually to deal with some of the issues that are faced in terms of childcare that I mentioned earlier, in terms of nursery education. So look, I think we can use some of the profits of the banks for good social purposes. I'm not sure I buy your proposal to close down all the private banks.
So let's have a couple of quick questions from Tina now, please.
Yes, just 50% of 18 to 24-year-olds say they've personally registered to vote, and that's coming from Radio 1 Newsbeat's biggest ever survey of 18 to 24-year-olds. That's obviously a huge problem.
It's a massive problem.
What are you going to do about that?
It's a massive problem. Look, the government has introduced this ridiculous system of individual voter registration without proper safeguards. They were warned that it would cause a problem. The best I can do between now and the election is urge young people to register to vote, and you've got to do it in the next month or so. We've actually hired people to actually work for us to register young people in some of the main places where young people are not registered. So I think it's a massive problem, if I may say so. Programmes like free speech are important in getting the message out.
You absolutely may say that.
In getting the message out to young people. Look, however young people vote, there is a massive interest in young people not being disenfranchised. It's almost like we're becoming like the United States, where lots of people aren't even on the register. And look, if we get into government, we will change it, and we'll get young people on the register.
The closing date is the 20th of April. We'll tweet those details.
Yeah.
And following on from that, you talk about how people vote. 2/3 say they'd be more likely to vote if they could do it online or with an app.
Yeah.
Would you promise to bring an online voting?
I'm open to it. If it can be done with security, I'm open to it. I just, the only thing I say about this...
But voter turnout would drastically increase.
OK, well, maybe. I mean, it was tried a few years...
He's not buying your stats, Tina.
It was tried...
Well, two-thirds of people that they've spoken
I know, Tina,
to
but the
say
trouble is
they
it was tried a few years back, and I'm not sure it made that difference. I think it goes back to something that really is part of this conversation, which is, I think people will vote if they think it makes a difference. It's not that difficult to vote, but I'm open to looking at it. I'm open to it.
OK, gentleman here, you got a quick question? I'm looking for a quick question.
You've talked a lot about your principles on injustice. How would you in government condemn ISIS whilst being allied to a Saudi regime which is giving the death penalty for apostasy and adultery?
Doesn't feel like a quick question.
Well, I think that we've got to speak out against injustice and abuse of human rights wherever it happens in the world, including in Saudi Arabia. And we've got to be willing to do that. There was a case recently about the blogger who was sentenced to, a flogging. You've got to actually speak out about these issues. And I think it is right that we do so.
And you'll do that through arms contracts?
Well, look, there's issues about arms, and you've got to make sure that they're not used for the wrong purposes. Absolutely right. But I think my general principle is this, which is that whoever, you need allies in the world, and we need allies, including in the region, against ISIS. And Saudi Arabia needs to be our ally against ISIS. It's incredibly important, this, because if you're going to beat ISIS, and ISIS is a terrible threat in terms of what it is doing to poor innocent people right across the world, you need allies. But just because, hang on, let me just finish the point.
Yeah.
But just because you have allies, it doesn't mean you don't speak out when wrong things are done.
This is an ideological conflict, not a military conflict. If you claim to be combating radical Islamism and you're allied with a country that gives people the death penalty on the basis of religious theocracy, it's a war on terror. It's not a war on a specific state. You're talking about a fluid movement of Islamism that's largely being promoted by Saudi Arabia.
Look, I'd say a couple of things. Look, I think where you are right about this is that every country in the world, including countries you name, must be absolutely clear about their view of ISIL and their refusal to fund ISIL or anything like that. I totally agree with you about that. But I'd also make this point. Look, if you want to solve the problems of the region, if you're going to deal with ISIS, you need actually Saudi Arabia and, by the way, Iran, to be actually giving them no truck and no quarter. Because otherwise you're not actually going to solve the issues that are faced in the region. So look, I understand your concerns about some of what happens in Saudi Arabia, and we obviously don't have that system here, and rightly so, and we should speak out when there are abuses of human rights and other things, but we also need allies in the region against ISIL, given the threat they pose.
OK, we're going to move on to a question now from Mark Cosby. Where's Mark? There you are. What do you want to ask?
Well, obviously the recent talk's been about the SNP, but who would you be prepared to go into coalition government with?
Oh, yes, good.
Mark, look, let me just say this. I want a majority Labour government. And I really think the right thing to do... it's still possible. And look, the thing I'd say about this is I'm going to leave the sort of post-election speculation to other people. Because I just take an old-fashioned view. It goes back to this gentleman asking me about the manifesto and keeping your promises. Look, let's put a manifesto before people. I believe I can win a majority Labour government, and then the voters make their verdict.
But surely you must be planning ahead for if you don't.
No, I'm focused on one thing and one thing only, because I think what the country needs is a majority Labour government. Yeah. And now some people are saying, oh well, the elections are forgotten. You know, it's kind of like the commentators want to declare the result of the match before the final whistle has been blown. We've got 8 weeks to go in this election, so you know, I'm for let's leave the post-election stuff to other people, and I'm focused on winning a majority.
Do you have any plans to regulate independent churches that are being set up in the UK that have got hundreds of people attending, where lots of sexual abuse, etc., are going on, and obviously money's being claimed?
Yeah, okay, quick answer, but I'd like to talk about the coalition a bit more.
I don't have an easy answer to your question. Do you want to say a bit more about...
Yeah, obviously there's people that are attending, I work as a counsellor, there's people that are attending churches and they're being sort of sexually abused or emotionally abused, and probably because of the fact that there's a spiritual connotation to it, and people feel quite trapped. This isn't being regulated by anybody. Although money's being claimed from charities and taxes being claimed back, there's no independent person coming in and just maybe checking that things are okay. So do you have any plans to maybe have
What do you think needs to be done in relation...
I think that there needs to be a regulatory body. You know, I can't just suddenly turn around tomorrow and say, right, I'm going to be a pastor of a church and set up in a hall and claim money, and that is what's happening. Do you have could you maybe establish a regulatory body that people have to sign up to?
I mean, this sounds like an important issue. I'd say if it's a charity, then it tends to be a matter for the Charity Commission. But obviously, if it's not a charity and it's not registered as a charity, then you need to look at these issues. I don't have. It's one of those things I don't have an easy answer on.
Okay, that's fine. Gentlemen, yeah, here.
You receive a lot of negative coverage in the press regarding your leadership qualities. How derogatory do you think that could potentially be come the election in 8 weeks' time?
No, okay, I want to talk about the coalition. I'm sorry, yeah. Someone about the coalition.
You talk about the coalition.
Good.
You talk about, obviously, you've got to plan ahead. What would your approach be when, obviously, going to tax Google and companies like that are not paying their taxes, small companies that are paying their taxes?
So I think this is a massively important issue, this issue of tax avoidance. Because look, the problem at the moment is that there is one rule for the rich and powerful, another rule for everybody else.
But small companies are paying tax,
exactly.
and obviously big companies don't pay nothing.
Small businesses pay their taxes, and some multinationals don't. But let me tell you what we would do. First of all, we've got to deal with the abuses where they exist. So, for example, there's a massive loophole in relation to hedge funds. We deal with it. Secondly, we've got to deal with the tax havens, because there's an issue in relation to tax havens linked to Britain, right, where they don't actually have to be open about what they do. Thirdly, we've got to deal with this issue of profit shifting, right, which is where companies shift their profits from one jurisdiction to another.
Is that a promise, or is that you going to try it?
It's a promise. It's a promise. And look, the final thing I'd say to you is this. We've said we'll have an independent review of the customs and practices of HMRC, the taxman. Because the problem at the moment is that, and I think it goes to your question, if you're a large business, you can get, you get into a problem, you can have a sweetheart deal, and actually get let off, and small businesses are chased, from pillar to post to pay their taxes. And so, absolutely, we've got to deal with it.
Okay, have we got any comments about the coalition coming in?
Yes, I do. John Curtis, can you ask Ed to outright deny forming a coalition with SNP Greens? Simple yes or no. And pretty much the same question again. SNP coalition, yes or no? Yes or no?
This is a piece of nonsense from the Tories. Honestly, I've got to say to you that. No, I'm saying that. I don't want a coalition with them. I don't need a coalition with them. I'm not planning for a coalition with them. I couldn't be clearer. They've even ruled out a coalition with us. Honestly, it's nonsense, I promise you.
Okay, anyone want to say anything about the coalition? Yeah, good, yes, good.
If you don't get a majority and you need to go with someone else, and the SNP are there, the people that tried to break up the United Kingdom, rule it out right now. You're not going to go in coalition with them. We don't want them. No one wants the SNP.
I absolutely am saying it's nonsense. He's not going to... I mean, yeah, just say
it's not nonsense. You haven't said yes or no.
Lady here.
And what would you do if you had to go into a coalition with a Conservative government?
I wouldn't.
How can you argue that a coalition is really democratic when it's never really been chosen or elected by anyone?
I think that's the issue, and that's why I say I want a majority Labour government. Because, you see, that is the point. Look, the truth about this coalition is it has looked like an excuse for breaking promises, right? It's looked like the Tories say, well, the Lib Dems stopped us doing that, and the Lib Dems say the Tories stopped us doing that. So, look, where I am is focus on one thing only, majority Labour government, put our manifesto before people, get a majority.
OK, before we go on to our next question, if you want to be in the audience at one of our upcoming shows, don't forget you can apply at freespeechaudience.co.uk. OK, next question is from Faye Jones. Where's Faye?
Hi.
Brilliant.
Hi, Ed. The Home Office estimates that there are about 2.3 million adults in the UK who enjoy cannabis, in the same way that you say that you've enjoyed alcohol quite recently. It's been reported. Directly, alcohol...
What do you know that I don't?
Directly, alcohol causes thousands of deaths every year. The figure for last year was about 8,400, whilst cannabis causes none at all. Do you not think that it's about time that we had an evidence-based policy of reform for your drug policy?
Okay.
How do you defend the Labour policy?
I mean, I'm not going to go with you on cannabis. Let me try and explain why. Look, we know that there are harmful effects.
For some people, cannabis doesn't cause psychosis, so please don't tell me that it causes psychosis. There are studies where if you take a community who have a higher incidence of cannabis use and a community where they have a low incidence of cannabis use, there is no change in the incidence of psychosis and schizophrenia. What it might do is bring it out possibly in people who are already predisposed to it. And a regulated system would prevent it falling into those people's hands, and it would also help them avoid the strains of cannabis that would be bad for them.
What's your name, sir? Faye. Look, Faye, I don't agree with you, but I totally respect your point of view. I don't agree with you. Why do I say this? Because I think the signal that government sends is important. And if government sends a signal that it says...
You've had your say. Shut up now.
And I think, I sort of totally respect your point of view. If government sends a signal, though, that cannabis use is somehow OK, and we know there's harder forms of cannabis and softer forms of cannabis, I think it's sending the wrong signal. And, you know, you say it brings it out in people who are predisposed to it, but that doesn't sort of, and I know you're not saying this, that doesn't make it OK. That makes it, you know, very worrying. So, look, as I say, I respect your point of view, but I think it's the wrong signal.
So in a few years' time, when your children are teenagers and you find a bag of cannabis in one of their bedroom, will you be going to a doctor or will you be going to the police?
Well, I'll be going to neither, but
So cannabis doesn't actually necessarily mean that people should be punished by law, then?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
I'd be discouraging them from using it. I would definitely be discouraging them from using it. Absolutely, I would.
So you take your child to the police?
OK, we'll take someone else. Yeah, gentlemen.
I'd discourage them from using it.
You didn't answer this lady's question. She said, would you take him to the doctors?
Look, I hope I'd stop it happening in the first place. That's my answer.
You haven't answered the question.
Over the last, I think it was yesterday, there was a loophole within the drug policy within Ireland which made meth, ket, and I think ecstasy legal.
How are you going to restrict these loopholes within drug policy? Otherwise, it'll be, well.
This is a loophole in relation to where, sorry? Did you say
It was in Ireland.
Yeah.
Right, well, I mean, look, what's happening in Ireland is obviously not my jurisdiction, but I mean, look, obviously we need to deal with, if there are loopholes in our law, we obviously have to deal with them.
OK, yeah, gentlemen, with the glasses there.
Over the past Parliament, 16 to 19 education has faced crippling cuts of around 20%. Nicky Morgan and her Tory chums have made no promises if they're to be re-elected in May. What would a Labour government do?
Good question. So we promised to protect the whole of the education budget, so the early years budget, the schools budget, and the 16 to 19 budget. I think it's incredibly important, this, because I actually think 16 to 19 education is absolutely key. We've not talked about apprenticeships tonight. We've not talked about vocational education. Both of them are absolutely key for me for the education system of the future. Because I think we have an education system that focuses simply on the academic. I think it's narrow. I think it's uncreative. I don't think it's sufficiently vocational. And so, absolutely, you have my promise that we're protecting the whole of the education budget.
I'm Paul Whiting in York. Here comes the week question, poor Ed.
Yeah.
And this one from Flammable. Wouldn't legalising cannabis allow the government to make education free?
Oh, yeah. Tax it.
It's worth 1 million according to the FCA, just in wholesale.
I know, I totally understand that point, but you've got to make a judgment about whether it's a good idea to do it. You can't just say it'll get $1 billion in taxes, and therefore it's an okay...
alcohol and tobacco, then? They're far more harmful.
I know, but... I do understand the apparent contradiction, but I'm not going to come along and sort of criminalise alcohol or tobacco use. These have been part of what happens for a long time. We just voted through plain packaging. We're doing everything we can to deal with tobacco use. I think you've just got to make a judgment about where you are, and does legalisation of something that isn't currently legalised make sense or not?
Can we at least stop punishing people?
You two, have a drink or we're going to move on. We've got a question from Harry. Where's Harry Forbes? Harry, what do you want to ask?
Why will Labour not give the people a say on the European Union by giving us an in-out EU referendum?
OK, so why no referendum on the EU?
So, Harry, we've said that if there is a transfer of powers from Britain to the European Union, we'd have an in-out referendum, but you're right, we said that's unlikely to happen in the next Parliament. Let me explain why, and it's very simple, really. My priority, if I'm Prime Minister, is not to have a debate in this country about whether we should exit the European Union. I don't think that's not what I want to happen. I think for jobs, for business, for families, the right thing to do. And it does go to who we are as a country, whether we're an outward-looking country or an inward-looking country, and something else. Look, my priority, if I'm Prime Minister, is to build a future for our young people, sort out the NHS, deal with the economy and the problems in our economy, not, as I say, to get out of the European Union. So that's the reason.
Why does that upset you, Harry? Powers to the European Union. You haven't offered us a referendum as yet. You signed the Lisbon Treaty in the last Labour government and didn't give us a referendum. So why should we not have a referendum on that, retrospectively?
Look, you'll have to, Harry...
This guy wants a referendum.
He does. I noticed. Look, Harry, you'll have to make your judgment on this. But I think some of the polls might say it will be more popular to offer a referendum. But I don't think politicians should simply do what looks short-term popular. You've got to do what's in the interest of the country. As I see it, that's part of what leadership is about. If I'm Prime Minister and I follow David Cameron, what does he offer? 2 years of the only thing being debated, whether to get out of the European Union, something I don't want and apparently he doesn't want, a Tory party that's totally divided on it, and the other thing is, we've got to reform Europe. And here's the thing, which you may not agree with. I think you're more likely to reform it, not if you've got one hand on the exit door. Because I think if you're just, like, we really want to leave, and, we're going to put a gun to your head about whether you reform it or not, I don't think that's going to work. So let's reform the European Union, but let's stay in it.
That's come in. You guarantee jobs for young people. Won't this be affected by your pro-EU stance with regards to low-paid migrant workers?
Well, this is an important point. You see, I'm the son of immigrants, and therefore I think immigration has benefited the country, and I think we should stand up and say that. There is something else, though, which is the exploitation of migrant labour, which the questioner was asking about, is a big issue. There have been like a handful of prosecutions for failure to pay the minimum wage in the last 5 years. There probably weren't that many more prosecutions under us. And actually, when you've got a sort of nasty labour market where people are being brought in, paid less than the minimum wage, 15 migrants put in a room or a house, all kinds of things happening, that is bad for people coming here, and it undercuts wages. So we've got to deal with those abuses. So let's have a vision of a diverse country, and I think we should be proud to be a diverse country, which works for all.
One last comment from your team online, if you got one.
If you're so confident the British people want to remain in the EU, what will you have to lose by holding a referendum?
I think it's the issue, most of all for me, of my focus as Prime Minister. Right? And people have to make a judgment about that.
I think, to be fair, Ed's already answered that. Also, our time's up, so we've got to go. That is us for now. We're back on Tuesday for the Battle of the Kingmakers. What is the Battle of the Kingmakers, Tina?
I will tell you. We are putting the Green Party, the Scottish National Party and Plaid Cymru under the free speech microscope, and you'll find out next week.
Good. So until Tuesday, good night.